Wake up at 4 in the morning. Micromanage every hour of your schedule. Impose your will on your employees and project loud, aggressive confidence until you are crushing the competition. Eventually, the friction of that lifestyle collects a toll. Pushing relentlessly against reality breaks down the human body with stress, and aggressively forcing outcomes creates fragile, rigid systems that snap under unexpected pressure. Over 2,000 years ago, an entirely inverted approach to power was recorded. It achieved absolute dominance by refusing to exert any force at all. The mechanics of this approach are laid out in the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching is a classical Chinese text that serves as the foundational philosophical document for Taoism. The text is attributed to an ancient figure named Laozi. He proposed that the universe does not respond to yelling or brute force, but instead operates on a quiet, invisible baseline. Dominating your environment requires silencing your own noise to align perfectly with that underlying current. Chapter 35 of the text warns that talking about the Tao is incredibly boring. The Tao, which translates to the way, refers to the absolute, invisible principle underlying the universe. Compared to the shiny distractions of modern life, the text literally describes its own philosophy as insipid and flavorless. This chart shows a sharply spiking curve of temporary thrills, what the text calls music and dainties, compared to a flat, infinitely extending baseline representing the Tao. The spikes inevitably crash, but the boring baseline provides infinite, inexhaustible utility. Tapping into this baseline relies entirely on the practice of Wu Wei. Wu Wei is a Chinese philosophical concept that translates to non-action or effortless action, where a person moves perfectly with the natural flow of reality rather than fighting against it. Chapter 34 points out that this force creates and clothes everything in existence, yet it never acts like a boss. It demands no obedience, claims no title, and sends no invoice for its work. Think of a growing plant. If you want it to grow faster, physically yanking it upward out of the dirt will not help. You will only rip the roots and kill the plant entirely. True mastery requires you to foster growth without ever forcing the outcome or demanding credit for the harvest. Chapter 36 reveals the tactical, almost Machiavellian side of this philosophy, the mechanics of inversion. The text argues that physics demands a pendulum swing. If you want to shrink an opponent, you first allow them to expand. If you want to weaken them, you first give them the space to strengthen themselves. To overthrow a rival, you raise them up. You let them overextend their reach until they lose their balance and collapse under their own weight. The physical rule governing this tactic is absolute. The soft and pliable will inevitably outlast and overcome the hard and brittle. Leveraging this requires total secrecy. The text compares this strategic advantage to a fish. The moment the fish leaves the deep water, it is caught. In human terms, your instruments of profit, your state secrets, your unique advantages, your leverage must remain hidden. Showing them off to intimidate others instantly strips them of their utility. Strategic supremacy belongs to the person who yields, absorbs the opponent's momentum, and remains completely unseen until the obstacle defeats itself. Compare the sweating, exhausted executive to the Taoist sage. The sage holds what Chapter 35 calls the great image, the invisible blueprint of reality. People naturally flock to the sage. Instead of issuing demands or creating friction, he provides an environment of deep rest, peace, and ease. The final step to becoming this anchor is embracing what Chapter 37 calls nameless simplicity. This is the ultimate, quiet antidote to the endless cycle of human desire. By stripping away external aims and the obsessive need to control every variable, the things around you are finally allowed to settle and go right of their own will. This brings us to the core paradox of the text. The Tao does nothing, and yet there is nothing it does not do. The most effective move you can make today might be the hardest one to justify. It requires stopping the hustle entirely, sitting down and allowing the dust to settle. Conquering your universe requires the radical courage to stop fighting it.